Okay, good.
All right. I think I'm going to let them in. Here we go.
There's Isha. Yeah, great.
All right. So we'll give it a few more minutes.
Sure.
Everybody's watching the news to see, is there Segel, not a Segel? Nobody understands.
That in itself would drive you nuts.
I know, I know.
I don't think the government knows. They can't decide.
No. They can't even decide who's supposed to be deciding.
Or when to meet in order to talk about deciding.
Exactly.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Looking forward to this next webinar.
Oh, good. Welcome, everyone.
I think they did decide on this the Seger.
But it's only at night, right?
Right. Yeah, the 3 nights.
Yeah.
Tomorrow night, Friday night, and Motzei Shabbos.
Okay. Please God, it all be well. And that everyone is well. That's the most important thing.
Nancy, do you want to go ahead and get started and we'll just let people trickle in, or you want to give it a few more minutes?
Let's see, what time is it now? I don't want to, maybe just 1 or 2 more minutes and we'll see it then, because I don't want to keep, because I know it's going to start getting late and a lot I want to cover tonight. So I don't
Tell me, is
a lot we want to hear.
Is this being recorded?
Yes.
Yeah, because my sister she couldn't make the first one. And it would be so beneficial for her to hear it, you know, if she could.
It's been posted on our Facebook page. If you look, are you on Facebook?
Yeah.
So if you look at the Belev Shalem Facebook page, it's uploaded there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. And this one will also be?
Yes.
Okay, that's fantastic, because it was so good. It was so beneficial.
Thank you. Hi, good.
Hopefully a little quicker this time. I had some technology.
Oh, you mean it wasn't uploaded right away? Because
no, we just did it yesterday.
Because I think I did check a day or two afterwards and it wasn't there. So okay.
Yeah, I had some technology challenges.
Technical difficult.
We emerged victorious, so that was
okay.
Good. Great.
That's good.
Let's see. Who is here for the first time? Who wasn't here last time? Okay. There's, oh, look at the challah in the background. Ooh, wow, that looks nice. Your screenshot.
Wow.
That's nice. That's great.
Let's see. Here's the Barakita. Nancy Barak. Oh, Helen's there. Oh, my sister did make it.
Oh, good.
Oh, but she's under my name. Okay.
Okay, so there's two of you.
Helen, you're muted. We don't hear you. Okay, is that better? Yeah. I
Okay.
figured when she said that that's the challah in the background, I figured you must be on there.
That's right. I couldn't get, I registered too late. It wouldn't allow me to register, so I just went in under your email. Under the email you sent me.
It didn't allow you to register?
No, they said it was too late. The meeting was over.
Oh, you mean for last time? You're talking about
No,
last,
now, today.
Oh, that's not good.
Why?
Huh.
obviously it's just starting.
Right, so what happened was I said, you know what, I don't want to miss this one. So I decided to go in under yours.
Okay.
Through the email
I'm
that you
having that same problem. Well,
anyway. Is there a way to get, did you video or did you record the last meeting?
yes.
Yeah, we did. It's uploaded to our Facebook page,
Okay,
B'Lev Shalem. And at the end of this meeting, I'll go ahead and I'll email everyone who was registered with the link. So
well, could you look for my email even though I wasn't registered?
I will. I actually think that I have your email because I think I sent you the link. If I
Yes, you did,
So
but that
yeah. So
said
I
it came up wrong, so
right.
whatever.
No, but I have your email then, so I'll make
Okay.
sure that you get it.
Okay, thank you. I
Great.
appreciate it.
Sure.
My sister raved about it.
Oh,
So-
that's so nice. Great. I think maybe we better get started. Yeah, we'll just let people come in. Okay.
I'm gonna mute everybody for now, okay? And then we can unmute later.
Okay, great.
All right.
Well, welcome everyone to part 2. I have a lot I want to share with you tonight, so we'll get started. Again, for those who weren't here last week, I'm Nancy Brown. I am a certified validation teacher and have worked in the field of validation for the last 8 years, but for the last 17 years, I have been a group leader with Melabev Day Centers in Jerusalem. My particular area of expertise is working with those with moderate to advanced dementia, but I've worked with people with all levels of cognitive impairment. So I'm also a doctoral student at the University of Edinburgh, so I have a busy schedule, thank God, and I keep learning from all the different experiences that I have, including these webinars and meeting new people, and especially families who I learned from you as well, all new and challenges to deal with, the different situations that you have to deal with every day. So once again, we're going to explore validation in all its complexity. We'll take a few minutes and review some of the issues and the questions we had from last week. But this week, we're going to go even deeper in understanding the reason behind the behavior of people with affected by dementia through various examples and techniques. We'll explore validation for those less verbal or someone who is nonverbal at this point. And then please use the chat function for any questions or any comments you'd like to make. Sharon will be monitoring that. And please, Sharon, stop me at any time if you think there's a question that's really timely, because I will continue to move right along. We'll definitely leave time at the end for any questions, but I don't want to miss anything in between if someone has a burning question or issue. I want to thank B'Lev Shalem for sponsoring these 2 webinars and for the privilege of being able to meet with all of you. I'm sure when your loved one started showing the signs of dementia, that was not an easy transition for you. I always think of what if you get into your car, you turn on the ignition and you close your eyes and then you start driving. You just don't know where you're going or what to do. You feel like you're going to go off the deep end because you just don't know where to begin and what to do and where to go for help and for dealing with this brand new situation that you have to deal with. But learning validation or learning to deal with someone with dementia is like learning a new language. You have to find a different way to communicate. They aren't going to change. And it's those of us who have to make the adjustments and learn the tools and new skills to communicate with them in a much different way. We have to learn to speak a language that is both verbal and nonverbal, because even in the condition of cognitive decline, these older persons gain a tremendous amount intuitive wisdom. So we also have to realize that they still come with years and years, decades of life experience and wisdom, and they don't lose that despite their loss of cognition. So what is validation? Validation is a method for communicating and building relationships with older adults who have some form of cognitive decline. It's not a magic wand, where it's not meant to make people better, or it's not a cure, but it is a very, very important communication tool. These elements, the sensory and the music and just empathy and listening and touch, all of these are techniques and things that we can use for all different types of dementia, including young onset. You won't have the same results depending upon the stage of dementia, but all these techniques can be used in all sorts of dementia. A little review of last week. Validation is based upon a triangle of basic attitude, theory. Naomi Feil, who is the developer of the validation method, was a student of the humanistic psychologist back in the 1960s. She did her undergraduate work in psychology and then went on to Columbia University for a master's in social work. But she loved studying the different humanistic psychologists. And out of those theories, she built the different techniques for validation. There are over 15 verbal and nonverbal techniques to use with validation. The attitude is definitely probably the most important to start with, and we'll then review just a few of those techniques for you to start working with right away. The attitude must come to that relationship with honesty and integrity, with a great deal of respect, trust. You're dealing with a loved one now who is now perhaps in the past and thinking in the past. The short-term memory is gone and long-term memory is there. So building trust in this new relationship is very, very important. And the use of emotive empathy versus cognitive or compassionate empathy. And we'll talk a little bit more about reviewing that in just a few minutes. I wanted to take a couple minutes to review some of the issues and questions we had last week. One of the big issues for everyone is anger, dealing with a loved one's anger. We had a comment in the chat last week from someone who said she's always angry, always angry. I was consulting with a family not too long ago whose mother was in an assisted living situation, living in her own apartment with caregiver, in fact, 2 caregivers on different shifts. And she was always angry. Nothing was right. Everyone was always stealing from her. Everyone was always trying to poison her. She would get up in the middle of the night. She wouldn't take her medication because she thought someone was wanting to poison her. One of the things she had to do was take a shower. Every time she woke up, every hour. On the hour, she had to take a shower. And so the caregivers would get no sleep at night. And then it became from stealing and poisoning to gradually abusing. They're abusing me. She's sexually abusing me. It became very, very difficult for the family. And the cameras that they had in the apartment did not show any evidence of any of this. So, you know, they're asking me what to do. I could not go visit her myself because of Corona and the restrictions with the assisted living place. So I'm just asking lots of questions. And that's where history is so important. And knowing where your loved one might be coming from. And then sometimes I find out families don't really know. I ask them, what is her background? Holocaust survivor. She had a very troubled childhood. The family did escape together, but the mother and father just couldn't adjust, couldn't get along. And she was very, very young at that time. The mother was not able to take care of her, went to the father. The father remarried, the stepmother didn't want her. So there was a couple years of when she was very young, where that was not a good situation for her. So she went back to the mother, who eventually couldn't take care of her. The father divorced the stepmother. She then went to live with the stepfather. And they talk about how much she loved her father. And then she became a social worker and dealt with families at risk, domestic abuse, and became an extremely strong, powerful person in her field. She was a leader, she was a lecturer, she taught at the university. And then when she was diagnosed with dementia, then she then lost all of that power, all of that authority. And so I went back to the thought of and I asked the family point blank, have you asked your mother about that situation of when growing up? Could it possibly have been that she was abused by someone in the family? This constant wanting to take a shower, this constant, especially cleaning her private parts, was an obsession. Well, no, she loves water. She loves the beach. You know, we certainly don't think anything like that has happened. But then, you know, this woman was tortured. She was absolutely tortured. And she recently passed away. So we really don't know. I know they were dealing with medication issues. So the anger, sometimes you just don't know where that's coming from. And many times a family is uncomfortable asking those, especially children. How do you ask those kinds of questions, and how do you get to those deeper moments where someone can really just let loose and be able to share? Another anger moment is, I know in the center, sometimes we would have someone who would gradually become incontinent, and then would not admit to having to go to the toilet, even though we know we needed to take her to change her, and then would blame either us or blame the caregiver for sitting her in a wet spot. There's anger about having dementia. There's anger about not being in control anymore. There's anger about losing their place at home, not being the person who is responsible for taking care of the home. And that can be expressed in many different ways. One of the questions was, my mother keeps asking where she's sleeping tonight, but yet she, you know, has a place. She's now in a nursing home, a Beethoven type of situation, but yet learning that she had moved and had been placed within the last 10 years from her original home to various places, having come from another country and made Aliyah, and then a couple different living situations since then. And what we'll talk a little more about tonight is basic human needs. And Maslow talks about basic human needs. The very, very basics are physiological needs and safety needs. So this right now, this woman, I mean, having lost short-term memory, just thinks that she has no control of where she's going to be that night. And she needs very much to feel secure and safe, just like a baby who, if it's not nurtured and cannot depend on the mother or a responsible adult for food and warmth and a place to sleep, and the physical needs taken care of, then they lose the ability to trust. Very similar kinds of situations when you're back in that position. Another question was wanting to sleep all the time. I think that can be many different kinds of things. Always in any situation, regardless of what it is, physical problems have to be ruled out first. I know medication is such a challenge for families. We see it in the Moadon, and we always want to know if there's been a change in medication or if they're playing with the medication a little, because we see it in the behavior in the center. And that's always such a terrible challenge for the family as well as for the older person who has to go through it physiologically. So definitely check out that first, but also wanting to sleep. They have no more responsibilities. There's no reason for them to be awake. They just are bored, depressed. They don't see a purpose. So why not just sit and sleep? And then what we find in the center as well, while someone may have their eyes closed and appear to be asleep, they're really not. We can go up to them, we can tap them on the shoulder or ask them a question, and they answer right away. Sometimes the real world is just too much. There's too much stimulation, there's too much to think about, and they just want to close their eyes and just check out for a little. So that's possibly what might be going on. But another question about a father who thinks that every day is Shabbat. That is also a very interesting question. It may be a place of comfort, maybe the religious experience and being very much into Shabbat or the holidays is comforting. It also, as the man of the house, gives him a role. He had a very important role in the prayers and in the davening and the blessings and all of those things that have to do with Shabbat and for the holidays. And so therefore he's trying to reclaim some kind of role for himself in the family. That's a possibility. We had a gentleman yesterday in the center who all of a sudden thought it was Shabbat. I wasn't there to witness that, but I was told what was absolutely fascinating is that all of a sudden his behavior would be difficult. It seems difficult or challenging when you have 12 other people in the room and you're in a group environment, but yet there was also at the same time a peacefulness that went over him. And all of a sudden he had a stroke many, many years ago, and he has a very difficult time with speech. So he was, but he would start speaking in Yiddish, a Holocaust survivor, and he would speak very clearly and succinctly in Yiddish. And he was so sure it was Shabbat, and he would start singing Shabbat songs. And so the group would join him, and then the very next day, first thing he said to me, he said, "I was here for Shabbat yesterday," which was interesting. He remembered he was at the center, but he really genuinely thought it was Shabbat. So I asked him, I said, how was it? How was your experience here? And he said, good. So I said, you know, you enjoyed all the time that you had here at the center, not referring to Shabbat, of course. And he said, yes, I want to spend every Shabbos here. So they're on many different levels at the same time. Had another story related to me recently about a woman who was just so fraught because she had lost her Siddur. And to her, her whole life fell apart. Her world meant nothing if she couldn't find her Siddur. And even when the Siddur was found, she still was not comforted. The family got a full-time helper in, and then all of a sudden, everything was fine. She calmed down. So perhaps she just needed that security. Perhaps she needed to know that someone was there for her, and for her, reading the Siddur and immersing herself in the prayers was comforting. But then even when the Siddur was found, it wasn't enough. So it's always good to have to look into many different kinds of levels of where that might be going. And validation can help in asking those different questions and how to ask those different questions to get to that deeper level. There was also a question about food. I'm going to spend a lot more time later on talking about food, so I won't forget about that. Validation, just as a reminder, uses empathy, emotive empathy, but what is not empathy? That's one of the things that many people use, and in validation, we discourage all the different things that you see in red because they are only short-term fixes. The therapeutic lie, we don't lie because on some level, they really do know the truth. And as any person who even doesn't have dementia, lying undermines trust. And that is something that you can't afford to do with this older person. So when you tell someone reassurance that everything will be okay, when they're angry, everything's not going to be okay. When you are angry, do you want someone to pat you on the shoulder and say everything will be okay? No, not always, because you want to be angry in that moment. You want to say what you have to say and be angry in that moment. And that you want to share that. And they're the same way, the exact same way. So I was also with a young woman in her early 30s who had taken on the responsibility of her mother, who had young onset, had been diagnosed 61 years of age. And this particular young woman, married and with a family and 2 small children, took on this responsibility and had her mother move in with them. Huge responsibility, and lived with them for 3 years, lived with her for 3 years. She just couldn't bear putting her mother in a home, and especially when she was so young. And then, so what does she tell her, young children who didn't have a traditional grandmother? But those young children learned lots of different interesting lessons just by being able to live with their grandmother. But her name was Stephanie. And Stephanie says, I know I'm right. I absolutely know I'm right. And I know if my mother would just listen to me, and if we, everything would just be so much better. For instance, they live in the States, and it's 30 degrees outside, and my mother doesn't want to put a coat on because she insists on that it's not cold outside. And I just tell her she has to put a coat on, and then it starts another argument. And so on and on and on, all sorts of examples she had. And at mealtime, she knows her mother will not eat her chicken unless it's cut up. But she gets angry because when she sits down at the table with everyone, no one else's chicken is cut up, just hers. Well, why is hers different? Does she think she can't eat, and so and she took the Validation Institute sponsored a family caregiver course that she took and learned all these different techniques. And she said, I have this mindset. I know I'm right. And I know if my mother would just cooperate with me, everything would be so much better. But after learning so much more about validation, I realized that I'm the one who has to make that switch. That when I'm dealing with my mother and I'm looking at this very challenging situation, I'm the one who has to make that switch and apply these techniques. She says, I still have the mindset that I'm right, but I know now that I have to make this switch and deal with my mother in a much different way. So what did she have to do? She had to practice the road to empathy. The validation techniques and all of these things do not come naturally to everyone. Certainly did not come naturally to Stephanie. The validation or person-centered care is not just about being a mensch or being empathetic or being a nice, kind, patient, sensitive, warm person. It is all that, but it's also a lot more. And a lot of it has to do with centering, making sure that you, as difficult as it might be, just for that moment, whether it's 2 minutes or an hour, if you can be totally present with that loved one, however possible that is, and doing that by just centering yourself, by finding the right distance. Sometimes you don't want to get so close to someone who is angry. And then in other times, someone may need that really, really close touch. Eye contact, a really warm, sustained eye contact is so important for people in dealing with people with dementia. And that then helps you move into empathy and being able to match their movements and their emotions with facial expressions, with your own body language, matching their own body language, and then listening very, very carefully. Emotive empathy there's a very important difference. It's about setting aside our own emotions and our busy lives in order to meet the older person where he or she is at that moment. Usually we use cognitive empathy, or that's the ability to perceive or to try to understand what the other person is feeling. But can we really understand fully how someone is really feeling with someone with dementia? Matching, there's a very important tool, especially when you're dealing with someone, and we'll talk more about those who are less verbal and nonverbal tonight. But matching a loved one's emotions, their facial expressions, their breathing, their tempo of breathing, their body position, whether or not they're slumped over or whether or not they're erect, if they're moving, if they're walking, that same kind of rhythm when they're walking and how they move in space. Their voice tone, are they really sad? Is their energy level low, or is it really high pitched and they're really upset or animated about something in particular? Matching that energy, not imitating, not mimicking. It's very important not to mimic, but just to try to get in rhythm with that particular person. There's a reason behind the behavior. What we call challenging and difficult behaviors are means of communication. And just and thinking that our loved ones have the same needs and emotions that we do. It's very difficult to remember that sometimes. They just deal with it differently. They deal with it with different, without filters. And, but they have needs that are unmet, and they need to express that. And we need to give them the space and learn how to do that. I want to show you a video of Naomi Feil, the founder of Validation. She is still living, her home is in Oregon. And she talks about personhood. She talks about older persons being able to operate on different cognitive levels at the same time, where some of your loved ones may be able to recognize you and you think they're very much in the here and now, but 2 minutes later, they're not. And the fact that they can go in and out many different times, and personhood is the topic here, and Naomi will talk to us about that.
Tell me from your experience why you believe personhood persists in in elderly people with Alzheimer's disease.
Well, I don't think it's ever lost. It's so people always have that innate, if you want to call it personhood or knowing, intuitive knowing, wisdom. And what happens is when people lose their controls and they don't know where they are anymore, this personhood comes out and flowers. It couldn't flower before because people were too busy doing their thing and being controlled by society and doing what they thought they should do. But now, for example, we were singing Daisy, Daisy, and this lady, every time we got to the word crazy, she'd stop singing. And it was so weird. One day, I looked at her and she looked back at me and she explained and she said, it's better to be crazy because then it doesn't matter what you do. And so she knew she was losing it. She said, what the heck? I'll go with the flow. So people know they're losing their cognitive capacity. And first they worry about it. Like Mrs. Goglich was worried about first not remembering because I saw her through all these transitions. And then she just, people accept it and say, okay, this is me. And then the me comes out. One lady who had just gotten this mini mental test, she said to me, that young man, he doesn't know who the president is. He asked me to tell him. Well, I didn't tell him. He has good eyes. Why doesn't he read a newspaper? When Bush wanted to be reelected, he came to an assisted living and he sees this little lady and he said, Madam, do you know who I am? And the little old lady says, no, but if you go to the front desk, they'll tell you who you are. A very famous lawyer, Mr. Bartlett, he kept asking for his mother. And I said, Mr. Bartlett, your mother is no longer alive. You're 90 years old. And he straightened up and he said, oh, yes, she is. My mother is alive on a technicality. And there, one more story. And these are people who don't know where they are. They didn't know my name. Some of them didn't even know their own name. They could never pass a mini mental test. One lady, she was so happy. And she was very, very old. And I said, Mrs. Smith, what happened? You look so happy. And she said, oh, I just had the most wonderful conversation with my mother and my aunt. I didn't have the heart to tell them that they were dead. Well, you see the levels of knowing? So it's that deep level that people never, ever lose. But that's very often the adult child never knows is there. And that's why they say they've lost their personhood, but they never did.
Tell me from your experience.
Okay. Nothing like a Naomi video. She's really quite extraordinary person, and still is, without question. She still shares and teaches. One of the things that Naomi has taught through validation is this last stage of life is the resolution of unfinished issues. We talked last week about people who are experiencing the symptoms of dementia, who are disoriented in some way, experience losses in many different ways. There's physical losses, there's the brain, there's the deterioration of the brain. But we start losing brain cells when we're late 20s, 30s. Normal aging is our brain shrinks. I mean, that's just normal aging. And so, but with people with symptoms of dementia, there is some brain damage going on. And so there's physical issues. There's just the isolation. There's physical ailments that happen. People can't walk so much anymore. The physical ailments are many, many, as you know. There are social elements and also psychological elements. An old person has denied severe losses throughout their life. Perhaps they thought, well, I want to put this behind me and I'm going to move on. But yet those things haunted them for many, many years. There's unresolved life tasks or crises that demand attention. Short-term memory is replaced by long-term memory, as we know. So unresolved issues, as the final stage of life, is dealing with these unresolved issues, unfinished business, so that because the goal of everyone is to die in peace. So we older people need to restore a sense of equilibrium when their eyesight and the hearing and the mobility and the memory fail. They need to make a sense out of an unbearable reality, to find a place that feels comfortable, where one feels in order or in harmony, and where relationships are familiar. Their harmony, their whole life is just out of order, and they're trying to make some order of where they are and who's around them. The need for recognition and status and identity and self-worth. People still need to feel useful and productive, even in these very difficult times, in these difficult times of their years. They've lost so much, and but they still have that need to feel worthwhile. I want to share with you some examples of some stories that, and some people that I have known that demonstrate some of these unresolved issues. And for instance, I already talked about Aviva and her anger with the caregivers and the showering and the torture the memories she had of her childhood. And then there was Molly. Molly was brought to Israel on Aliyah with her family, uprooted from a long-time home in Baltimore. And within the first 24 hours of moving into their apartment, Molly was gone. Now, the family did not realize, they thought Ima was taking a nap in her bedroom. But as they were busy unpacking and all the kids were running around, they get a call from the police. And they said, "We believe we have your mother here." And they said, "Well, it's impossible. She's got to be in her room sleeping." Well, they went back there, and of course she wasn't there. She had gotten out of the apartment and started wandering up and down the sidewalks. Well, she didn't think she was lost. And, it's a beautiful thing about Israel. They have most amazing police officers stopped, and they could tell that she was obviously an English speaker. They took her to the station, treated her like a queen. So she wasn't afraid at all. But they figured she was a new immigrant. They had the wherewithal to call Nefesh B'Nefesh and said, "Did you have any family who recently came on Aliyah with an elderly mother?" So that's how they were able to locate her, locate the family. So she just kept, it didn't matter. She was able to get out of the house. I don't know why they didn't change the locks or do something different, but one day the grandkids looked out the window. They lived they lived very near the Great Synagogue. And so they looked, and she had crossed over 4 lanes of traffic with her cane. There she is. And they saw her in the plaza of the Great Synagogue. And they go, "There is grandma over there." Unbelievable. So they brought her to the center and she started coming. Very stoic woman, little tiny thing, very stoic with this cane that she would love to poke around, and couldn't get a smile out of her for anything. But she was always seemed like, and then when she would want to wander around the center, it was as if she was looking for something, and she was always wanting to get out. And so one day I said, Molly, I said, are you looking for something? And she looked at me, her eyes got this big. I said, you're looking for something really important. And she looked away. And I said, were you able to find it? And she looked at me and there were tears. I said, so you lost something very important and you can't find it. And then she turned away and waved me off. So I did that a couple different times, 2 or 3 days in a row, just would give her her space. Had a family meeting soon after that. And they were so concerned about mom escaping and what do we do? And so I told them my experience with asking her and her response. All of a sudden, and I said, is she looking for something? I said, I did one time ask her if it was her old home back in Baltimore. Did she, nothing like that, nothing. Did she miss her husband? Nothing. Got no response whatsoever. But all of a sudden, the older son just became white. He goes, oh my goodness, I have not thought of this since I was probably 6 or 8 years old. Mom lost a baby. And the younger sister, who, did not know any of this, said, you've got to be kidding. I had a younger sister who didn't live, was stillborn, I believe. And he said, yes, I'd never thought about it for so long. And I said, that's what she's looking for. And he says, oh, I do remember it wasn't something we talked about. And Dad told her not to be sad. And Dad told her that we had to get on with life and we would just have more babies. And so, Mom had the rest of us, and, so, she just tarried on. And so Molly had not had a chance to mourn that baby that she had lost. Annie was a social worker. And she specialized in children, abused children, and kids at risk who really needed a home. And so whenever she talked about her family when she was growing up, she would only talk about her brothers and her father. Never heard a word about her mother. And then she also had a brother who was murdered. And so she was always looking for him, wanting to take care of him. I have to take care of Morris. I have to take care of him. And then she would and then she would get really upset, and she'd say, oh, there's just things you don't talk about. There's just things you don't talk about. There are things that people do and you just don't talk about it. And that was her. We never did find out. Who knows what it could be, but just giving her the space to say that was important. Yeah. So that was Annie. Leela always loved music. She says, I was born with a song in my heart. And so in a group session one day, we were talking about what is the best thing about growing old. And then, so that conversation went, then what's the worst thing about it? And Leela says, I wanted to be a doctor. And my husband was allowed to be a doctor. We were in pre-med together. But when it came to be accepted to medical school, I was told that since I was a girl, I couldn't go to medical school, but my husband could. So where she went or what the situation was, I don't know. But to her, she always wanted to be a doctor. So she said, I became a school psychologist, and that was okay. But it wasn't what I really wanted to do. And her family had never heard that before. And another situation where her brother studied the violin. And oh, I wanted to study the violin so much. I love the violin. I love music. I wanted to play so badly. And I wanted to study with my brother's violin teacher, but he said women were not strong enough to play the violin. And therefore I could not play the violin. So she says, I took a few piano lessons, but she says, I still have a song in my heart. So those are some situations where people are able to share some unfinished business, things that were unresolved in their life, things they wish happened, and very interesting things to explore. They want to relive positive as well as negative moments and express unfulfilled needs. Okay, we're going on to communicating without words. Aphasia has to do with expressive language as well as the ability to receive language or to be able to process what is heard. People talk in what I call word sandwiches with made up words. And this is where it takes a tremendous amount of patience, a tremendous amount of listening, really extreme listening, because within those word sandwiches, you will have 2 or 3 words or even a phrase that has so much wisdom that really does mean something. This is with people who are less verbal or nonverbal, just patience and being comfortable with silence. Not so easy to be comfortable with silence. A lot of times, we want to give people choice as much as possible, and we have to make the choices very simple. If it's too complicated or if they really don't understand what we say, they'll use phrases like, I don't care, I don't know, you choose. Just like, for instance, I know what every single person in my room loves to drink. And if for some reason they're not drinking whatever it is, then there's something wrong. I've got to play with the mixture. But sometimes asking them if they want coffee or tea or hot chocolate is too much. Those choices are just way too much. So sometimes I'll ask, do you feel like something hot or something cold today? And then I know what to fix them, and that is something that they really can identify with. Okay, I'll have something hot today. Repeating sounds or words over and over again, and asking for that thing over there because they just can't find the word. So aphasia is definitely an issue in the more advanced stages of dementia. Another issue we find a lot with more moderate to advanced stages is the cognitive side of motor skills, the loss of fine motor skills. One family realized that they needed full-time help for their mother when the daughter-in-law every single time would do her laundry and do some of the shopping for her. And she always loved putting the things away herself. So the laundry would be sitting on the bed. Mom, the laundry's ready and it's all folded, ready for you to put away, and it's on the bed. And I laid a few things on the kitchen counter for you to put in the refrigerator. And then they began to find the things that should have gone in the refrigerator, in the lingerie drawer, or some of the laundry stuffed in the toilet or in the refrigerator. So the cognitive side of motor skills and not knowing, the brain's not able to send messages, in the right ways. The example of using the comb upside down, not knowing what to do with the toothbrush. We find people who, with the utensils sitting in front of a plate, will pick up a knife and start trying to use a knife to feed themselves rather than a fork or a spoon. People who were able to go to the bathroom themselves, or even in some limited way, would come out pretty disheveled. That happens because they just don't know how to put themselves back together. We find it in people not being able to sit down on a chair properly, or not be able to juxtapose their body in space can also be part of that. And it's just watching all those kinds of things. People, especially in the more advanced stages, have used symbols a lot to express different emotions, different things from the past. And that can be in people. It can be a concept of some kind. It can be an object. There are times when one gentleman one time looked across the room, very gray-haired gentleman looks across the room and sees another gray-haired woman and absolutely thinks that's his mother. There's someone there who looks like a symbol. I know in my own experience with my mother, she, in her later stages of dementia, she became very angry and lashing out at my father. And my sister said, but she knows that that's dad. And I feel really bad for dad because mom's getting really angry. And I said, Judy, I don't really think in that moment she sees dad. I said, you know, she had a very problematic relationship with her father, our grandfather. And so I said, perhaps in that moment, she's lashing out. She's getting back at her dad for all the things that she wanted to say when she was young. I said, we really don't know. People can definitely be symbols. And women especially need to be a mother. They need to feel like they're a nurturer. Doll therapy is controversial in a lot of ways. They do have very realistic weighted dolls that I introduced a couple of them in our center. I had two or three very specific people that I wanted to see if that would help. And it's been quite extraordinary. And then there are other people will say, you know, that's not a real thing. And there are others who get a great deal of delight even just looking at them sitting in the corner. A wedding ring. I was talking with one woman one time and she pointed to my wedding ring. And I asked her, I said, did you have one of these? Because she didn't have any on. And then, yes. And I said, did your husband give that to you? And then we started a very brief, but in her word sandwich way, a conversation about missing her husband and how together they were for so many years. And she wishes she had one back, is what she would call it. Women and their purses. Oh my goodness. It's a symbol in many, many ways, and especially when it comes to a purse. It's not just people who are in the advanced stages. You'll find people in the early stages have to have their purse with them. And they could have who knows what all in there. But that is a symbol of trying to collect what I am. This is who I am, and everything that belongs to me is in here. And I feel together as a person if I have all these things and I have this purse. And then there are people who need to collect things and need to put things in order. So, we have caregivers, returning silverware and all sorts of odd things that end up in purses. But one of the videos we watched last week where Naomi describes a gentleman who keeps pounding and pounding, and it's not like it's not pounding his fist. He was a carpenter and he's fixing and he's hammering, he's working. You'll see a woman sometimes, we see this many times, fidget with a cloth or feel like they're rolling up a cloth like this, or their skirt, constantly rolling up a skirt. They could be working, they could be folding laundry. They could be, if they dealt with fabric, if they were a seamstress or something like that, just that whole tactile motion of remembering what it was to work and to do something like that. So symbols can be very important. One of the things, especially not so much with people in the early stages, but in the more advanced stages, is touch. Very, very important thing is touch. Naomi has developed what she calls anchored touch. Touch, whenever you are validating with someone with dementia, the touch needs to be purposeful, not a tap, not just hold hands, but a real purposeful touch. These are universal touches, and they come from different psychological techniques. The mother touch is right here, and it comes from the place of when a mother holds a baby and nursing a baby and touches the baby on the cheek to direct it to the breast. The baby never, ever forgets that. That person, well, that will take you back to that person who is in the more advanced, particularly nonverbal stage of memories of mother. The father touch, how a father holds a baby, kind of like this under the head and kind of bouncing them. The father touch is the back and the head. I remember I was validating someone who was doing a validation session for someone who was nonverbal. And the mother touch, I was trying to get his attention, to have him to get some eye contact with me. The mother touch wasn't working at all. So I waited a few seconds. I did the father touch and he recoiled. I go, whoa, there's something there. So I took that wasn't working at all. And then the spouse touch, that real intimate, right under the ears and under the chin. When I did that, oh, he just opened his eyes and smiled. He had an amazing love affair with his wife. He took care of her to the very end, before she passed away. So I asked the daughter, I said, I touched where, in validation, this father touch. And he goes, oh my goodness, his father was abusive. He left the family. And whoa. So there was so much history there just by recognizing the touch. Child touch and just a friend touch right on the shoulder. And that's always a good place to start when you're not really sure what's going on with someone. Just a nice, firm, gentle but firm tap or a touch on, not just a tap, but a touch on the shoulder is just a friend touch. Because we do that to each other, or used to before Corona times. So there are some different kinds of techniques for people for nonverbal communication. Oh, there's one other story I wanted to share with you. I also had another client who was nonverbal, and she had this mantra about her. And sometimes it would become so loud but it had a rhythm to it. And the family was just didn't know what to do with it. They were trying to give her more medication, but then that zonked her out and they didn't like that. The daughter said, no, we've got to stop that. So, so I worked with her for a couple days and I got into her rhythm. And I know from her history that she loved to dance. There was anytime a song would come on, she was up dancing and wanted to get everyone to dance and sing. She would sing and knew every song imaginable. She spoke 3 or 4 languages, also a Holocaust survivor, and went from Poland and then escaped to Costa Rica, met her also survivor husband there, raised her family in Costa Rica. So she also identified with Spanish culture. But anyway, so I knew some music that she liked, but she had this rhythm to her. And so I said, Sarah, I said, is this your new song? And we would, she would do this and I would do this with her and we would take hands. And she said, yeah. And I said, may I sing your new song with you? And she looked at me, yeah. And so what I did, rather than just the da, 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 the sound, I put a sing song to it. So I put a sing song to her rhythm, but yet followed her rhythm. And then she started sing songing with me and followed that particular rhythm. And then, and I said, so Sarah, we have a new song. And so we called it Sarah's Song. So I suggested to the family that when she does that, whoever is with her, to get in that rhythm with her, put a little melody to it, she'll follow that. And then after a few minutes of doing that, I thanked her for letting me learn her new song. And then all of a sudden she drew me to her and she literally took my head, put it on her shoulder, and then started to rock me. And it was really, she was wanting to rock a baby. Maybe she was remembering when her mother rocked her. They were able to escape together, she and her sister and her mother. It was really quite extraordinary of what touch and just getting in someone's rhythm can do. And I want to show you an example of that as well, another Naomi video. This is the Gladys and Naomi video. It's a very famous video of Naomi's. This is a woman in a nursing home. She had a Christian background and was very familiar with religious music. We'll talk a little bit more about music as well. Very, very powerful. And Naomi will talk about the different steps that she went through with Gladys.
When people are very old and deteriorated and no one enters their world and they're just sitting there, they will withdraw inward more and more. And their desperate need for connection is all now inside. And if a person is all alone, even if they're very deteriorated, there's a longing for this kind of closeness. Mrs. Wilson, hello. You want me to sit? Can you see me good? Gladys Wilson is a wonderful example of a person who is in the phase of repetitive motion, where people use movements, repetitive movements, because they don't have any more speech or very little speech, but they have human needs that need to be expressed. You're crying. You're crying. You have a tear right here in your face. You have a little pain. You don't want me to touch you. You're very sad. Can you see me? Is it scary? Are you afraid? And if this person sits with their eyes closed, rocking back and forth, and maybe there's a tear coming down, there's a need there. There's a little tear that's coming out. Do you feel it? You feel a little tear? If you gently use touch, and I touched Gladys Wilson for the fingertips right here on the cheek, is where the mother usually touches a child. If you touch an infant there, it looks up, and every cell remembers where it was touched by the mother. And often that person knows, even if they can't say a word at that moment, they won't talk, or they don't want to talk, but there's a communication, and that person is no longer alone. Can you let me in a little bit? You think? Just a little? You think I could be with you and Jesus for a minute? Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so. I used music because when speech is gone, music, especially with Gladys Wilson, it was religious music because there's emotion tied to it and safety tied to it. So I used her old church songs. Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. What I did was, when she moved, I moved with her. And when I was singing, because she didn't sing with me, so I matched the intensity of my voice to the intensity of her movement. And pretty soon, for a split second, we became one person. Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves me. The Bible tells me so. So at one point, when she got very quiet and very peaceful, and my voice became very quiet as hers and very peaceful, and my breathing slowed to her breathing, she pulled me to her, and I moved with her. And for her, at that moment, I believe I was a symbol of her mom. Can you open your eyes now? Do you see me? Feel safe and warm? Yes? He's got the whole world in his hands. 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 He's got the mothers and the fathers. He's got the mothers and the fathers in his hand. He's got the mothers and the fathers in his hand. He's got the whole world in his hand. The breakthrough doesn't happen every time. The person will not always open their eyes and look at you. But if you keep trying and you keep centering yourself and really look at that person and really mirror their movements, maybe not this time, but the next time you come, you'll have a communication. You feel safe. You feel safe? Yeah. With Jesus? Yeah. And me?
Yeah, very, very powerful video. So that's dealing with people who are not verbal. I wanted to spend some time now to go through some, what I call my survival guide for caregivers, to some activities to share with you. Social skills are something that's also lost the need to feel important, the need to feel engaged. They've lost their place or their purpose. They're no longer a mother, a father. And so therefore, it's difficult for them to find some purpose. So we find sometimes that just letting them tap into some life skills, The person over here to sweeping, using the broom, is taken from our center. I kept a broom handy, and every once in a while, this woman would get up and start sweeping. She felt useful. It was something she could do. And it was, and sometimes they want to clean. So people would clean, they would like to just wipe something, anything. A lot of the women especially would like to help set the table, or granted they needed help and some of them could hardly walk, but just allowing them to do a little bit was so, so helpful. Just being with the young people, that one of our Bache roots down there was learning Yiddish, and she had gotten a book about learning Yiddish for dummies. And then we also do packing for soldiers or for kids on after school programs. So whatever you can engage. This Molly that I was talking about, after the daughter found out that her mother had lost this baby that she didn't even know she had. She didn't know she had a sister who didn't live. They were able to talk about it one time. And she said, "Mom, I didn't realize I had a sister." And they both cried about it. And Molly never went looking anymore. Molly never tried to escape anymore. One of the things we used to do in our center before Corona was to make vegetable soup in our room. And we had everyone, men and all, peeling and chopping. And we would give Molly a potato and a knife, not too sharp, but a knife. She was our fastest potato peeler ever. And if we needed more potatoes peeled, all we had to do is give them to Molly. And so we shared that with the daughter and said, "Oh my goodness, I don't want her in the kitchen. I was just so afraid that maybe she would hurt herself or whatever." I said, and I took a video, I said, "She's our best potato peeler we have." And just knowing that helped really transform that Molly now was able to take part in holiday and Shabbat preparations, and it really changed the family dynamics. Food. One of the most important things, of course, with all people, and especially, and also with people with dementia, is food. Perhaps if they can assist in any way in the preparation, in the chopping or the peeling, if that's possible, setting the table with placemats, folding napkins. And this is an example of a photo placemat, which also can have a lot of conversation. Changing the color of your plates can also be extremely important, because white is just not so good for someone with dementia. There's not enough contrast. You don't put white mashed potatoes on a white plate, white rice on a white plate, white cottage cheese on a white plate. Contrast really makes a difference, and it really makes food look much more appetizing. In fact, these are the examples of plates that we now use in our center, the larger one being the lunch plate, and then the smaller one is what we use for breakfast, our light Israeli breakfast that we serve. And the appetite increased significantly for those who did not want to eat very much. And it also caused conversation. There was just something about the energy in the room was changed because of just having different colored plates around to talk about. Oh, look how new, and look how bright, and look how pretty. There was talk about food, someone wanting to eat too much. Food is laden with so much symbolism. It could be that they're not satisfied, that, sometimes we overeat because whatever we ate, we thought it was going to taste good, but it really doesn't. So we just decide we need something a little bit more, even though we really didn't need it. And for people with dementia who also lose a lot of their taste buds, we have to wake those taste buds up. this is not an advertisement for Heinz ketchup, but I am a big believer in ketchup. It's spicy, it's has a sweet and sour taste to it. It goes a long way, and it really adds to any kind of chicken, or especially, or any kind of meat that you might have. It really does help that go down much better. One of the things, the Pillsbury little balls, these are bakeless, that you can also, we put gloves or whatever, that they love to just roll them up in a ball, decorate them with the sprinkles. They're non-bake, very easy to do. It's something that the women love to do, love to fix. It's something you can do with the grandkids, great grandkids. It's an activity that they can also do with Saba or Safta. And normally with people with dementia, things need to be sweeter or spicier. Spice it with salsa. Water is very difficult I have found, to get people to drink actual water. So spice it up with a little flavoring, whether it's apple juice or something. Bubblies, it's difficult to hold bubbles in your mouth, so it's much faster, much easier for them to swallow bubbles, or to get them to intake that. They love, our room loves pizza. It's something that you can roll up and make in a sandwich to make it like a finger food for them to eat. Anything that they can do in a finger food keeps them feeding themselves longer. Bowls that are rounded a little so that food is not falling off the edges, also help. So those are some ideas, because it just because many times we say, we hear, oh, my wife or my mother never liked sugar in her tea, or never ate her or drank her coffee this way, or she doesn't like sweet things. But we found they didn't drink, they wouldn't eat some certain things. And so when we started as long as there are not any dietary issues, of course, by being diabetic or whatever. Salt is another thing. Just a little bit of salt, as long as there, again, not any dietary issues. Oh, and there was one other thing, ice cream, very popular ice cream. And we serve it particularly in cones. And why? Because ice cream cones trigger memories. Who doesn't remember as a child eating an ice cream cone? So when we do serve our ice cream, we serve it in a cone, and it can trigger reminiscent kinds of moments with your loved one. Music, one of our most favorite things is music. We had one woman who's also having problems with her verbal ability, would start singing. You'd ask her a question and she would start singing. And we would ask her, what does music mean to you? And she said, music gives me words. Because when they can't even remember their own name or what they had for breakfast or where they are, they will remember the words to every single song they sang in the 1940s or whatever. They will remember those songs that they learned, especially from the ages of about 18 to 30. Very important to find out those particular songs that they're familiar with. One woman said, I hate it when I'm singing a song and the artist gets the words wrong. So, they just love music. There's 3 ways of using music. The passive way is using music in the background. People say, well, we always have some music playing in the house. But for people with dementia, it can be like any other kind of noise. It's like background noise. They can just check out and not hear it. Active, the best is sing along, being able to sing along with their very favorite songs and to be able to sing with you. And then the most effective is having a personalized playlist of their favorite songs, and use headphones, because as those personalized playlists with headphones, and they are in their own world, I have had people who are totally nonverbal start moving, their feet start tapping, their bodies start moving, their hands start moving, can be quite extraordinary. One of the things also is to have a splitter so that two of you can listen to the same music at the same time, and maybe you can dance together or sing together, and you can share that same music with them. It's also good for the young people. YouTube is also a great thing. Rhythm sticks, my people love the sticks, the actual sticks, because they just love to feel the rhythm. So, and Music and Memory has, that particular website has a lot of good recommendations. The Power of Music, Dr. Oliver Sacks, who passed away not too long ago, said that we humans are a musical species, no less than a linguistic one. So one of the things about music, especially for those who are less verbal and particularly nonverbal, they need to feel the music. I had one woman whose eyes were closed most of the time, totally wheelchair bound, hardly ever would speak. So I would put on the old songs that I have a playlist on my phone stream, and I'll stream it from I have a good Bluetooth speaker, and I would sit it on her lap and put her hand on the speaker so she could feel the vibration. And the music was pretty loud, but they need to feel the music, not just hear it. We used an iPod with one woman, and the family said, it's so loud. We were so afraid we're going to burst her eardrums, but yet she wasn't the least bit phased. And I said, that's because she's feeling the music. Sometimes it has to be extra loud for them to actually feel the music. Oh, and also when it comes to a Bluetooth speaker, be sure you get something that has a good Bluetooth speaker that has a lot of bass. One of the things about people with dementia is that they don't deal with higher pitched tones, and sometimes the more inexpensive Bluetooth speakers only deal in the higher treble sounds rather than the bass, and they not only feel the bass more, but they hear much better and able to tolerate it much better. One of the games we play, and this is something you can share with your family, and I'd be happy to send you a template of this particular one, then you can make up your own. I can send it to Sharon and she can make sure it's available to everyone. A musical bingo. What I did was just make up this sheet, a full-size sheet, and all these different songs, and we play bingo. We have each person choose a song on their bingo sheet, and if we chose You Are My Sunshine, and then we go around and see who has it, and then we end up singing it. So it doesn't matter who's involved. It's something that the whole family can do. You can make it, whether it's Hebrew songs, religious songs, it doesn't matter what songs it is, songs that they know, that you know, that your loved one is going to be able to be familiar with and to sing along. And it really is a very good way. Also, if your loved one can still have some reading skills, what another thing that we do that works really well cognitively, as well as they enjoy it, is to read the words of the song. Very simple, just with these little choruses in a very dramatic voice. And I'll say, in your best theater voice, read, and you will get some of the most dramatic readings to You Are My Sunshine or Ain't She Sweet. We'll get the most dramatic readings, and then we sing it. So it's really quite a thing as well. Then there's different games. One of the really fun things that our people love to do is balloons. Absolutely a winner every time. Put the music on, let them hear some jazzy music, and the balloons they love the balloons. Different ideas of different the parachutes. They don't have to come in those big ones with a big group. They come in groups of, you can get parachutes like that for 4 to 6 people. The upper right, at least it's my upper right, where you see the different mosaic colors. Those are canvases that we got at Macstock, and our clients painted those. Working with the staff in our Benoche route, every single square was, every client had a part of creating that. And that is one of our bulletin boards. It takes up an entire bulletin board. And it would be a beautiful thing to do as a family, and especially with a young person. On the back of it, they could write that this was an activity that we did with Saba or Safta, and that would be a memory that they would have as well. And then sometimes all they want you to do is just to be with them. Just that hug, just that quiet time. Like I said, being comfortable in silence, just holding hands, just being there. Sometimes that's all they want. And sometimes that's just good enough. And so, wow, I know it's a lot of time here. So now it's your time. Any questions, any comments, any concerns? I know there was a lot tonight and a lot I wanted to share with you. But if you have any questions at all, this is a time that I'd like to address your things.
Nancy,
Uh-huh.
hello. I really enjoyed it, and also the first class, especially a bit hard for me to say. My dad died 4 months ago, and he had dementia, so
I'm so sorry.
it makes a lot of sense. You said, thank you.
Yeah.
And also, I like the way you took in things from the last session, and you brought it into this session. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Wow, it's not easy. Did he live here, Samantha? Was
Yeah.
he here in Israel? Yeah, I was long distance when I lost my dad about a year ago. And it's still very raw for me as well. A long distance caregiver especially is really, really hard. My sister, God love her, she was a nurse, but her specialty was teenagers. It was not easy for her. Yeah, there's something about losing a father that a daughter, it just really hits very deeply. Yeah. But thank you. Yeah, I do this work. I've always loved old people. Ever since I was young, I had an amazing relationship with my grandmother. Oh gosh, I adored my grandmother. And I feel, and I continue to do this work in honor of my grandmother. And I'm sorry, I'm getting emotional. And my mother and father both, who I lost to complications with Alzheimer's. And of course, when I lost my grandmother, we didn't know that. We didn't know what it was back then. It was just memory loss. And this was 40 years ago. And but I do this work every day in honor of them and in their memory.
Very special. Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so sorry for your loss as well. We're at the end of this particular session, but if you would like to do more of this, if you'd like to go into more detail about techniques, about the different stages, one of the things that we do talk about in validation is 4 different particular stages of dementia and very specific techniques to deal with each stage, from young onset to mild cognitive impairment, those who are older but now in the early stages. What do you do with that, all the way to someone who is totally nonverbal, wheelchair bound, and what do you do to stimulate them as well? So and the Validation Training Institute, we can definitely coordinate with Sharon and the staff at B'lev Shalem for more sessions for an actual family caregiver course, whatever you need, we're here to help with that. So please contact me directly, or please contact Sharon or the staff at Belev Shalem, and to share with them as well. Whatever it is that you need, and we'll see what we can do to get you more training and feel more comfortable in dealing with the situations as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else? Wow. Time goes so fast. Wow. Thanks for sticking with us. It's been a wow.
Nancy, thank you so much. It's just been a gift that you've given all of us, and it's your generosity, to us, to the people you work with, to the tchum. I can't think of the word right now in English. It's deeply appreciated and valued. So thank you for
My
your
privilege.
time.
My privilege to share this. It's my privilege. Yeah.
And I will. Nancy said she's going to forward the PowerPoint presentation, and
Right.
that'll also
Both of
have
them from
all
last
her-
weekend this week.
And that will have also all of her contact information, and we'll make sure that gets into all of your hands, and also the links to last week and this week, which will be available online and downloadable, so you can watch and rewatch. And
When you can't
And
sleep in
that's-
the middle of the night.
Yeah.
This is the greatest.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks.
all right. So good night to everybody. And
Thank you so much, everyone. I really
Good night.
appreciate you being with us
Thank
tonight.
you. Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
And Shabbat Shalom and Purim Sameach. And,
Yeah, yes,
and take care. Be in touch.
be well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. It was
you.
fabulous. You were
welcome.
wonderful. Thank you so much. Happy Purim to everybody.
Oh, yes. Purim Sameach to everyone. Thank you very much, everyone.
bye-bye.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
and to Belev Shalem as well. Thank you.
Right.
All right.
Okay. All right. Thank
I'm
you.
gonna go ahead and end the meeting. Nancy, thank you.
Thank you. We'll be in
It's
touch. We'll
just-
be in touch.
Absolutely, it was amazing. It's really, I'm so grateful, and I
Aw.
really am. So
Pleasure. I
and I
love
learned a
doing
lot. I learned a lot, and your passion just comes through. So really thanks. And Chag
Oh.
Sameach, and we will definitely be in touch, and hopefully one day meet in person and not.
Oh, that would be great. That would be great.
In the meantime, I send you my staff with love.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Okay. Good
Take
night.
care.
Good
Bye.
night.
Good night.